So if you've been watching this channel for a while, you know I've pretty much dedicated my life to pizza over these past few years. Between making it at home several times per week, working at a pizzeria, reading about pizza, watching videos, listening to podcasts, and now finally selling my own pizza. I've been working tirelessly to perfect my recipe, and the feedback I've gotten on it has been incredible so far, with a lot of people saying it's some of the best pizza they've ever had. It's taken me a while to get to this point though, and each event I host takes a ton of time and effort to make possible. So today I'm gonna show you exactly how I operate my pizza pop-up. And the first thing I need to do is prep my dough, sauce, and toppings. And since I'm serving this food to the public, I do actually rent out a commercial kitchen in order to do my prep work. And I have it booked tonight, so it looks like it's about time to head out. So I'm on my way to the prep kitchen right now. I've got it booked today and tomorrow for 2 hours each time. So today what I'm gonna prep is basically everything except for the dough. So my sauce, my cheese, my different toppings. And the reason I'm doing that is because today is only Wednesday, my pop-up is on Saturday, and I'm always changing up my dough recipe, but this time I'm using a pre-ferment, a poolish. And so because of that, I really don't need to let the actual dough rest for much longer than maybe like 48 hours. So if I make the pre-ferment today, mix the dough tomorrow, that'll be Thursday, and then we got Friday, Saturday, and then the dough will be ready. That's kind of the plan. I just arrived here to the prep kitchen, so let's get started. Alright, so as you're probably starting to see already, kind of the biggest hassle with doing these pop-ups is really just the transportation of everything. This is all just equipment I had to bring from home because I don't have like a second pair of it here. Like this baking tray, got like some squeeze bottle, scale, immersion blender, Cambro containers, just a bunch of stuff. So I'm gonna start by unpacking, getting some stuff set up, and I'll get started on my sauce. Now while I do have to bring most of my own small wares, the prep kitchen has a lot of the essential large kitchen equipment like a gas range, oven, dish room, stand mixer, and a commercial can opener like the one I'm using here, which isn't 100% necessary, but it does make my job a bit easier, and it's just one less thing I have to bring myself. So I'll just add my tomatoes to a bowl, which I did buy a dedicated set of to keep at the prep kitchen. Then I'll just add my signature spices and seasonings before pureeing the sauce with my immersion blender, transferring it into a clean container, labeling it, then throwing it into the walk-in cooler until the day of the event. So all this is pretty straightforward. I'm basically just knocking out task after task from my prep list until I get it all done or until I run out of time, in which case I would just leave the rest of my prep for tomorrow. Now menu-wise, in addition to my regular margarita, pepperoni, and marinara pizzas, I also serve a specialty pie that I switch out every few months, which right now is a fig bacon pizza. So for tonight, I have to prep my red sauce, which is already done, pepperonis, which I also already did, that's just a matter of portioning them into containers. I have to prep my cheese, garlic for my marinara pie, bacon for the fig bacon pie, and my pre-ferment so that it can rise overnight to use in my dough tomorrow. Now I also have to prep my fig jam and lemon pepper dressing for the fig bacon pie, but I forgot to bring the ingredients for those, so I guess I'll have to prep them tomorrow, which isn't ideal, but hey, that's showbiz, baby. Now just like anything in a kitchen, time management is the name of the game here. And in this case, since the bacon is the thing on my list that's gonna take the longest, and it's mostly hands off once I get it in the oven, that's what I'm working on next. So what I do to make sure the bacon ends up crispy on the final pizza is pre-cook it in advance of the event. So I'll cut the bacon up and throw it into the oven, and while it bakes, I can go ahead and work on my next prep tasks so that I'm not wasting any time. And next on the list is shredding my cheese. I like to shred it into large shreds rather than grating it these days, just that it melts a bit slower in my oven. And before I'm even finished with the cheese, the bacon is done baking, so I'll set that aside to cool before finishing off the cheese and then throwing the finished product into the cooler. And once the bacon is cooled, I'll just do the same thing, divide it up and throw it into the cooler, and then it's onto the garlic. Again, this garlic is for my marinara pie, which isn't ordered very frequently, but I like to have it as a vegan/dairy-free option for people. And I like to use a mandolin to slice the garlic just so it's at the exact thinness I like and as consistent as possible. And of course, safety first always, so I'm wearing a chainmail glove here so I don't slice myself. Now what I haven't been showing is me periodically going back to the dish room to clean and sanitize all my dishes so that I can give them time to dry before I have to head out, which of course eats up a bit of time as well. So at this point I've only got about 15 minutes of kitchen time remaining for the day, which should be just enough time to complete my last prep item, which is my pre-ferment, aka my poolish. So all I do for that is combine water, yeast, and flour, and then cover it up and let it rise overnight. And this will be the only source of leavening for the dough. I don't add any more yeast to the dough itself. So once that's done, I'll clean up all of my prep areas, which of course is a very important part of any kitchen work, and then I'll head out for the night. And by the time I get back, I'm usually pretty hungry, but it's like 9:30 p.m. and the last thing I want to do is start cooking a meal from scratch. But fortunately, I don't have to do that because I have some delicious, healthy meals in my fridge from this video's sponsor, Factor. If you're not familiar, Factor provides, well, delicious, healthy meals that can be heated and ready to eat in just 2 minutes, which makes them perfect for busy lifestyles. lifestyles. I know for me when I'm busy, it's easy to just order takeout or worse, snack on unhealthy processed food, but Factor helps me avoid that temptation. Factor's meals are delivered fresh, never frozen to your door, and they can be heated in just minutes in either the oven or the microwave. Not to mention, they really are delicious, so it leaves me with no excuse to go with other less healthy options. Factor offers a variety of meals for different diet preferences between keto, calorie smart, vegan and veggie options, or my favorite, which is the protein plus meals. Because one of my big hobbies outside of cooking is lifting weights, and I'm currently trying to slim down just a little bit without losing too much muscle. So Factor's meals help me ensure that I'm getting enough protein while staying within my calorie goals. But possibly the best part of Factor is that it's actually less expensive than takeout. And the meal plans range from 4 to 18 meals per week, so you can customize them to your specific needs. Plus, you can easily skip a week if you need to. So head to factor75.com or click the link below and use code CharlieAnderson50 to get 50% off your first Factor box and free wellness shots for life. You'll get 2 free wellness shots from 3 available flavors for every order while you're an active subscriber. So thanks a lot to Factor for sponsoring this video, and thank you for your support. So I'm back at the prep kitchen bright and early the next morning, this time to finish off my dough. So I start off by weighing out my ingredients, and in this case I'm making about a 25 pizza batch. Now I like to use ice in my dough just so the temperature stays down and the dough doesn't over ferment. So I'm adding that plus my water to my mixer bowl. Then I'll add my poolish, which has risen nicely overnight, and from there I'll just weigh out the rest of my ingredients and add those as well. Here I'm using flour, diastatic malt powder, salt, and olive oil, but like I said earlier, I'm always changing up my recipe. I also withhold the salt and olive oil until later in the mixing process, so I'll get the mixer fired up and then add those last ingredients gradually when the proper time comes. Now since this mixer does mix relatively slowly, it takes quite a while to reach full gluten development, usually about 20 to 30 minutes. So in the meantime, I'll just do some cleanup and other miscellaneous prep work if I have any to do. And by the time the dough is done mixing, it does feel a bit on the warmer side, so I'm going to transfer it into a separate container and then toss it into the cooler for just a bit. Unfortunately, I also forgot to bring my probe thermometer, so I couldn't see the exact dough temp, but I've made this dough enough at this point that I can tell when it's a bit too warm. So after 30 minutes in the cooler, I'll bring it back out to start balling it up. Now in an ideal world, I'd also do a longer bulk fermentation, but just due to the limitations of renting this kitchen space, I have to get everything done within a 2-hour period. So I pretty much ball right after mixing. And the balling is pretty straightforward. Again, I've only got about 25 dough balls to make here, and I like to use these metal dough tins to give each ball its own space to rise. Then from there, it's straight into the cooler for 2 days. And with that, all of my prep work is done, so I'll just do my final cleanup before heading out, and not worrying about anything else until Saturday comes around. So it's the day of the event, about noon right now. I just went to my prep kitchen, picked up my dough and sauces. So now I'm back in my apartment because I need to pick up my oven, which I've got on my dolly here, along with some other miscellaneous supplies. So we're gonna go to the venue and drop these off. So yeah, the oven transportation is kind of the most annoying part, but I mean, it's essential. You can't bake pizza without an oven. Now, once I get to the venue, it's basically just a lot of unloading from my car and setting up. Fortunately, this particular brewery has a nice dedicated space for pop-ups though, so there's a lot of equipment already in place. But for me, the first order of business is always getting my oven set up and firing because I need it to be hot enough by the time service starts. And you may recognize this oven because I made a video about it when I first got it. It's definitely more underpowered than I would like, but it's the only one I could find that's usable on a normal 110 volt outlet and can bake up to 18-inch pizzas. The main issue with it though is the recovery time. It tends to cool down a lot whenever I bake a pizza in it. So to combat that, I load up my oven with 2 steels plus my biscotto stone in order to retain as much heat as possible within the oven. So once that's going, I'll get anything that needs to be kept cold into the cooler, and then I'll set up my folding tables. And to make my setup look nicer, I cover each one with a disposable tablecloth, which also makes cleanup at the end of the night a lot easier since they'll catch anything that spills. Then I'll set up my sign to make it official and bring in the rest of the stuff from my car, including the dough, which I'll leave out on the counter to warm up to room temperature. And right now it looks pretty good, so I think by the time of service it'll be about perfect. Speaking of which, I've still got about 2.5 hours until then, so I'm just gonna head out for a bit as my oven preheats and take care of some last minute tasks at home. And 2 hours later, I'm back to finish getting settled. So let me show you how my workstation looks from my perspective once it's all set up and give you a feel for my workflow. All right, so I got my front table here, stretching station here, Goes to the oven from there, which has been preheating for about 3 hours, and it's pretty much up to temp. Still needs a little bit more time, so you can see how long that takes. After I bake the pizza, I'll throw it onto this screen to cool for just a minute. When I'm ready, I'll either toss it on here if I'm using it for slices, or if it's a full pie order, I'll bring it straight over here onto one of these trays and then go in straight to finish it off. Then when I get an order for slices, I can just grab them straight off of this tray, and then I reheat them in this oven, which is not mine, just owned by the brewery here. And then I finish off the slices or pies here with the post-baked toppings. So let's take a look at the dough. Pretty good. Tell it's definitely more proofed up than it was before, and it should be good for the rest of the night. So you can see I've got a pretty efficient system, even though I'm only one person working with a pretty underpowered oven in a small space. I make it work reasonably well. So what I do at this point usually is bake up a few pies to get them ready for slices, so that once I officially open at 5 o'clock, I can just go ahead and bake full pies that get ordered. Since I can only bake one pizza at a time, I kind of have to do it that way because I can't be baking up pies for slices and full pies. It would just be too much and I would get super backed up. So I'm gonna get started on that. I'll show you the first one that I make, and from there I'm probably gonna be too busy to film, so I might have to save that for another video. Typically takes about maybe 6 minutes for the first bake. Usually that slows down throughout the night as the oven cools down a bit, but of course while that's baking I gotta keep moving, so I'm gonna go ahead and stretch out my next step. And there we are, first pizza of the night. As you can tell, it's a little bit underbaked, but that's because this one will be used for slices, so it's gonna get reheated anyway. If it were a full pie order, I would have baked it a little bit longer. But from here, it's pretty much right into the oven with the next pie. And I'm basically just repeating that process all night, just putting pizza after pizza in there. Since I am, again, just doing this by myself, pretty much like in the weeds from the beginning, from like 4:30 up until at least usually like 7:30. Sometimes I even sell out. Like I said, I gotta get to it. I'm running a little bit behind schedule today. So if you haven't seen my New York style pizza recipe, which is roughly what this recipe is based on, you can check that out here. Either way, thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.